on this earlier, but can you share some further insights on how you come up with engaging and unique content ideas related to football for your social media handles? Given that the best part is most of the football content creators we have got is they probably have
So
like
anyway, we can
so
continue. Yeah.
So
yeah so
you want me to explain a bit more about how do I come up with the ideas for the football content?
Yes,
Oh,
considering that,
so
certain teams just do it with around certain players or certain teams, but you are really, around the plane when it comes to that.
one thing I would say is thanks to like doing the freestyle jobs and like performing at a lot of places, I have acquired a lot of football kits for those various teams that I've been working for. So I think that's always helped with the content creation first and foremost, having a variety of kits that visually is like kind of can capture someone's interest immediately, which in today's world is very difficult / important because everyone's attention spans are terrible because of social media. So you get maybe that half a second of someone's attention before
Coming from a social media creator.
yeah, it's terrible. So I would say for the time being now, it kind of revolves mostly around teams that I have the kits of. And then in terms of the actual ideas, I really kind of I don't know how I do it, and I know that's a really crap answer for you guys. I know everyone wants the secret sauce. I wish I knew what the secret sauce was. I think I just genuinely have a bit of a knack for hearing certain sounds and maybe saving them because I know that they might have potential to be used for a football skit. But I tried to kind of mix it up with like different teams, different players, the different kits, because then if you do it for a team that's not so big, and like that's the thumbnail and things like this, people, you can capture the curiosity of an even smaller minority of people, but it's a tricky one. I would say some I actually do. I'll let you in on a secret. Some I do actually make the hypothetical situations that never happen. So like
Yes.
I for example, I it happens not super frequently, but sometimes around big events, I will make a skit for either outcome. So for
Oh,
example, for the Champions League final, I actually had a quite a good skit for if Inter Milan beat Man City in the Champions League, which didn't happen, so that skit got discarded. But like, yeah, I think as well also when I'm away, like on freestyle football jobs, I can't film like the skits. Like I can't take my tripod and the light and the green screen and like all this kind of stuff. So I have to like make them in advance. So it also really helps to be able to come up with skits that are generic and not necessarily time bound to what is going on right now. Another problem, actually, now that I've just remembered this, another problem that I really hate with this kind of line of content is I really hate it when there's a crazy weekend of football where there's like maybe like 3 or 4 big incidents where it's like I could make a skit on any of those things, but in reality you only
right.
need a day or two where it's relevant enough to post about it before people are like they're not interested or something else new has happened that's completely eclipsed it. So yeah, that's kind of as much insight as I can give to the process that goes behind me making the football skits.
No.
As a co-founder of this podcast, of course, I often say that Doipan here is the better half here. But like, I just think that, I was thinking that maybe you can send us the discarded reels and maybe we can make a segment like in a parallel universe with Steve Gray. Because of course, I think about what we can do with the podcast at times. But yeah, jokes apart. So touched upon an interesting point about hearing the right sounds. Talking about a team which is making the right noises this season is Arsenal. I would say Arteta's Arsenal, and I think it would be unfair if in this podcast we don't talk about Arsenal as a team and how well they have done in the past 1.5 years. So,
Yeah.
in the last 1.5 years, I really enjoyed when I have had an Arsenal fan here because I could always crack the Europa League joke. But look how karma bites you. So yeah, I'll come to you here. They have got Declan Rice. They got Julian Timber, which we know, of course, unfortunately is out through
Mm.
injury. They have got Kai Havertz. So Arsenal look like a much well-rounded unit overall. I mean, they had that one unfortunate result against Nottingham Forest, but overall they look like a much better unit than what they looked a couple of years back. They've got the leaders and people like Martin Odegaard and all. So, how well do you think Arsenal are doing this season? And do you think that this is the season when they can actually beat Man City to the title?
I think we're only sort of 4 games in. It's still early days. The
Mhm.
injury to Julian Timber, I think actually to Julian Timber, I think could be really costly because he was looking so good in preseason. That was a real shame. But Declan Rice is an unbelievable addition. Like he's looking like he's worth every penny at the moment. A British record signing, and he's just taken like a duck to water. Um, I would say it's a we. I think we'll be roundabout there again. It wouldn't shock me though if we finished second in the league again. I still think Man City just have this unbelievable ability to just be a winning machine, and even when games aren't going their way, they just find a way to just
Absolutely.
bit. And I think Arsenal got a bit better at that last season, but not to the same level of consistency as Man City. I still think their squad depth is the best as well. But we'll have to see. It's still early days. I think Arsenal have been, I mean, bar the amazing result on the weekend, beating Manchester United 3-1, I haven't really been overly impressed with Arsenal. I think, even like dropping points against Fulham and stuff, we've shown a little bit of a uh, not a weakness, but like I still think there's a lot more to come from Arsenal this season. So we'll have to wait and see for them to really click and get out of the yeah.
Something that Steve just mentioned about City cracking the code. But even as an Arsenal fan, do you think that now that City have let go of certain players which were core parts of a part of their core team, like João Cancelo, of course, he went to Bayern last season in itself. Then we had Riyad Mahrez. Then we had something like Gundogan, someone like Gundogan who was the former captain. Do you think, as an Arsenal fan, this is a problem for Manchester City that makes the Arsenal fan in you happy, or you are still pretty confident that Pep is going to handle it well?
I mean, I've always been like really impressed with recruitment. I think like losing someone like Gundogan, who's a really underrated player, but then getting in someone like Mateo Kovacic is like it's really good replacements. Was really surprised to see Mahrez go, but then they get in someone like Jeremy Doku. These are the kind of signings that I think maybe could be a potential test for Man City, because these are people that, as anyone will tell you, the Premier League is possibly the hardest league in the world.
Yeah.
It will be a question of how quickly these players can adapt to it. But Man City's recruitment is that good that you'd like to think it'll be decent. But I can't remember the last time they've had a truly a terrible signing. I mean, even like Calvin Phillips is a good player. He's just not getting played. It's not like he's playing and is playing poorly.
Mhm.
They just manage their squad in such a way that it doesn't really show any signs of weakness. Whereas Arsenal, on the other hand, like Kai Havertz was a strange signing. I'm going to be honest. It was a very strange
Yeah.
signing. A lot of money paid for him. And it seems like a very expensive experiment. And we'll have to see how that pans out. But with all of Man City's signings, they seem to adapt pretty quickly. So I don't think Man City fans will be concerned that they've lost people like Laporte, Mahrez, Cancelo, because they always seem to have like the next person like available. They're very on it.
Yeah, and I feel now that Anukar sir asked you about the current state of Arsenal and all, I just last week had this conversation with one of my friends who's just still sitting here right next to me, Anirudh, about how you could probably just mention or make out from what era a particular fan is a team, like a particular person is a fan of a particular team. Like for example, most of the people here in India, if they are Arsenal fans, they are probably fans because they were part of the Invincibles era, and if they are Tottenham fans, they are probably more than 50 years old because that's when they, like, that club
I
last
like-
won a trophy. So tell me a bit more about
That
your
is one of the
Arsenal.
funniest things you've ever said on the podcast. I'm sorry to interrupt you here, but by a fan.
I just had to do it. Sorry if any Spurs fan sees this, but I don't think we have hardly encountered any Spurs fans so far in our 60 episodes. But Steve, do tell me about your earliest memories being an Arsenal fan. Was it because of that invincible season, or were there other, like, a couple of other contributing factors as well?
So I started supporting Arsenal the year after they won the Invincible.
Okay.
Actually, so that was just a tiny bit before my time. But yeah, like my earliest memories would be the season where they finished second. Their squad was made up of players like Reyes, Edu, Gilberto, Freddie Ljungberg, Perez, Bergkamp, Van Persie, and of course one of the people who made me kind of fall in love with football, Thierry Henry. Although he is a close second to my favorite player of all time, actually, is Thomas Rosicky, who I think was just super underrated.
Absolutely. World class.
But yeah, that's sort of like my earliest memories with Arsenal. Never went to any of the games or anything, but yeah. So I was probably about 10 or 11 when I started supporting Arsenal. Those are that's like the earliest time that I got into supporting Arsenal.
All right. So now, Anukar sir, if you have any questions to
Yeah,
add, because I have
I
one last question to ask.
Yeah, I just have one thing to ask that since like I got pretty excited about talking to you about a time because after the Invincibles era, like when I started watching football in 2006, and it doesn't make me old though if I know often here says that, but the thing is in 2006 and 7, I remember Arsenal had two really good forwards. Unfortunately, one of them got really injured and it couldn't work out. They were Eduardo de Silva and Emmanuel Adebayor.
Yeah.
And I remember they used to absolutely run past teams. And I think at that time, Liverpool had Gerrard and Torres, who were not exactly a striking partnership because Gerrard used to play in midfield. But like, what are the thoughts on that partnership? And do you think that it could have that it is very underrated when we talk about because of recency bias, we don't talk about it much.
Yeah, I think Eduardo was quite underrated, actually. I think even in that era, Van Persie, Adebayor was a good partnership as well. I do remember in the 07-08 and 06-07 seasons, Arsenal were playing some really, really beautiful football. 4-4-2, but you wouldn't think it was 4-4-2. The movement was that dynamic. The midfield in particular, with like from left to right, Rosicky, Flamini, Fabregas, Pleb. It was just fantastic. But the strikers in particular, Eduardo, I still think to this day, if he didn't get that injury at Birmingham, then we would have gone on to have won the season that year. Adebayor as well, before he played for every other English team under the sun, was a pretty good servant. Actually scored a lot of goals. So yeah, I think it was a bit of an underrated partnership, actually. Van Persie as well, not quite at the prime of his powers, but really, really good. And of course, like, nobody kind of talks about it, but that was sort of like, the first season or two after Thierry Henry left, where it was a big responsibility for everyone to kind of like step up and adjust. And I think actually the football got better after Thierry Henry left. Not that it was bad while he was there, but I feel like people like Fabregas were just able to flourish a bit more. And the goals were spread out, around the team a bit more. And interestingly, it almost feels like maybe Tottenham are kind of going through a similar period now without Kane. Like, they're on fire at the moment and everyone seems to be playing really well and all the football isn't going through Kane now. But I'll say that very quietly. Hopefully their luck runs out.
Uh, of course, staying with all these witty comments, I am no longer surprised that Steve does so great with his social media work, which brings us to the last question of this episode before all of us can, share our concluding thoughts around it. Steve, what advice would you give to aspiring football content creators looking to make a name for themselves in the digital space? Like, what according to you works and probably is a nice way of going about things being a football content creator in the long term?
That's a really, really good question. So I would say it's a bit of a cliche answer, but I think the first and foremost, that you can't ignore is a genuine passion. I think right now it's almost like it's almost so painstakingly obvious to see the content creators that are faking it till they make it because they're doing something that they don't enjoy, and it's, yo guys, what's going on, and it's like they're putting on the TV presenter voice every
Right.
day when you know they haven't got that much energy and enthusiasm about the thing. So I feel like that can work for the kids and everything, but ultimately in time, it just becomes a bit like, I might be on my own here, but I feel like it's a little bit fake. So if you be yourself, you don't have to fake anything, and that is a lot more sustainable, and you can do that indefinitely. So I would say find the thing that you
Right.
genuinely are passionate about so that you kind of don't have to fake it, and you'll come across authentically. All right, yeah, maybe you'll have to up your enthusiasm and the way you speak and stuff a little bit. By all means, experiment with that. But I think it's clear it will come across clearly by the way you talk, your body language, all this stuff. If this
Right.
person is genuinely passionate about it and stuff. Interestingly, I say all that, but nobody ever actually hears my real voice for the football skits. So I kind of just have to, but I still have to like put the facial expressions, the body language. You still have to kind of do it. But it doesn't feel like hard work. Although some of them do take very long to make because it's like lots of different like costume changes and the getting the lip syncing perfect and all this kind of stuff. The other advice I would say is collab with other people. It goes without saying, but I just feel like you can go further with other people if you lift each other up. Don't be too egotistical about trying to do everything on your own and be better than everyone else, when in actual fact you can benefit from each other and each other's like different ways of thinking. I would say also, if you really are serious about it and you want to do it in the long run and everything, then do try to invest in good equipment. I think it does go a long way. Sometimes people might want to take the cheap alternative routes, and that's okay. But if you're not getting the results you perhaps feel that your creativity deserves, then maybe it is worth kind of like, upping the quality through the equipment. And also, if you spend a lot of money in this stuff, it can be a good incentive for you to be like, right, okay, I've just spent £350 on this camera lens, whatever.
Yeah.
Those are some general tips I would say. And then the other thing I think would be just to, and I'm guilty of not doing this enough myself, but try and do things in bulk. To plan ahead, try and do things in bulk, film it all in bulk, and then edit it, get it ready to kind of post out or schedule to post it out. That can help a lot. I really should practice what I preach there, because I don't do that enough. I tend to do it a little bit better when I'm filming with other people. But left to my own accord, I am a bit sort of like just doing it a day at a time. Which isn't the best, I must admit. But hey, we all have our flaws.
No, I think, Anukar sir, this is probably the best parts of running a podcast. We are close to meeting probably 50 different people with 50 different football experiences. And especially for today, I would like to say, and I'm sure, Anukar sir, you will agree with me to this, that having Steve's perspectives and attitude towards things, it's something that would resonate with us for a long time, right?
Definitely, man. I mean, 1000%. And I think every time a new guest comes in, it's a new story. Like with Steve,
Yeah.
initially, we got a bit of a rebuff, and like, we had to do a bit of convincing. It actually, I was discussing this with Doipan here that, it reminded me of the time when I had to convince my girlfriend for a date. Initially, she said no. Later, after some convincing, she said yes. And in both the cases, it has worked out great. Like, I think
Yeah.
this podcast is a testament to that. And but jokes apart, Steve, it means a lot for us as a growing podcast. For us as an Indian football podcast, it means a lot because honestly, we know that it's not just about you coming in as a guest, it's about what we got to learn through the podcast. Because as we are growing, me and Doipan, we have a 10-minute call at least every day where we talk about the podcast, where we talk about things we can do. But then what I honestly feel is that when people like you give us those little insights, like you gave us that insight about creating content in bulk or creating an alternative sort of content beforehand, these sort of things really give us that edge. And I think it's very kind of you because a lot of people know a lot of things about a lot of things in life. Simple as that. That's how industry experts work. But for you to actually tell us and share it with us, it goes to show that more than Steve Gray as a content creator, the type of person that you are. And
Oh,
honestly, my respect for you and thank you so much, Steve, for coming on the Indie Football Podcast. It indeed is a moment of pleasure for all of us here.
No worries. Thank you very much. I'm glad that you find it useful. I hope the listeners find it useful as well. And yeah, sharing is caring. So, it's always good to get other people's perspective on things. Otherwise, you can get a little bit too tunnel visioned in your own ways. So, yeah, no, it's definitely good to try and keep an open mind and pick up a few tips and tricks from other people in the industry.
yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely. I think that summarizes things beautifully for everyone. Thank you for tuning in. Do remember to follow us on our social medias, specifically Instagram. We have been doing some interesting screening coverings, reels, and whatnot. Thank you, Steve, for taking out the time again. Till next week, goodbye. Take care.